What's up guys, my name is Connor and welcome to the Songwriter Sanctuary. Today we're going to be talking about one of the biggest progressive rock behemoths from the 1970s, and my personal favorite band of all time, Kansas. Kansas has gone through many lineup changes throughout their tenure as a band, but at the time of the song we'll be discussing today, they featured Steve Walsh on keys and lead vocals, Kerry Livgren on guitar and additional keys, Robbie Steinhardt on strings and also lead vocals, Rich Williams on guitar, Dave Hope on bass, and Phil Ehart on drums. Kansas rose to prominence in the early to mid 1970s and exploded onto the scene with their 1976 album Leftoverture, which featured the hit song Carry on Wayward Son. And in 1977 they followed it up with the album Point of No Return, which featured their other major hit, Dust in the Wind. However, the song we'll be discussing today is neither of those. It's instead a song about a tortured genius who changed the world as we know it, and then became a recluse and retreated into obscurity. Before we get into it, if you like this video and you like the type of content I'm producing on this channel, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. That little bit of support goes a tremendously long way. And without further ado, let's talk about it. So the song we will be discussing today is Closet Chronicles off of the Point of No Return album. This 6.5-minute progressive rock masterpiece, composed and arranged by Kerry Livgren and Steve Walsh and produced by Jeff Glicksman, was the final song on the A side of the album, dropping a bomb on the listener before they flipped the record over. The song was originally written by Kerry Livgren and then reworked by Steve Walsh and was actually considered for their prior album Leftoverture. However, in the words of Jeff Glicksman, there was some tension around Steve reworking a song originally written by Kerry, so they decided to scrap it. They ended up pulling it out of the dustbin when they were looking for songs for their follow-up album, Point of No Return, and thank God they did. If you haven't heard this song before, you are in for a treat today. So what's the song about? Well, at face value, it seems to be about a wise and generous king who's had a long and successful reign, but has a mental breakdown and descends into madness. In the lyrics, the king retreats into his closet where he's content to live out his days just stewing in anxious introspection. However, the entire song is actually a metaphor, and it's actually about the famed business magnate and Renaissance man Howard Hughes, who died in 1976, the same year the song was written. Just a disclaimer, I couldn't find a concrete source to confirm this, but it seems to be widely accepted by Kansas's contemporaries and fan base. And it's even listed as a factoid on Howard Hughes' Wikipedia page. So who was Howard Hughes? Howard Hughes was a renowned businessman during the mid-20th century. He was unbelievably smart and business savvy, finding success in the film industry, the aviation industry, the real estate industry. He successfully invested in all sorts of different industries. He was a noted philanthropist, and so much more. He was a modern-day Da Vinci. Everything the guy touched turned to gold. However, later in life he sadly had a breakdown and became a recluse. He was diagnosed with OCD that only became more and more severe until his death, and he eventually became manic about his isolation and secrecy. The idea that the song is about Hughes is supported by the line, gazing out the window of the 42nd floor. Gazing out the window of the 42nd floor. In 1966, Howard Hughes rented out the top 2 floors of the Desert Inn in Las Vegas, floors 41 and 42. And then he basically shut himself in for the next 4 years, going so far as to even buy the building in 1967. He lived in near perfect isolation, only breaking it to have meals delivered to him and to conduct business over the phone from his penthouse suite. Another lyrical hint is in the line, "Draw the drapes, now destiny is done." I draw the drapes, now destiny is done. While he lived there, Hughes never left his penthouse unit, and he always kept the curtains drawn. Just as a side note, some people think the 42nd floor is a reference to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the famed Meaning of Life number. But that's just coincidence, as the original radio broadcast for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy didn't air until 1978. So now that we know a bit about the backstory, let's break down the lyrics in a little more depth. So, as mentioned, the story, whether you view it as being about Howard Hughes or a literal king, is about a rich and powerful leader who has a mental breakdown and becomes reclusive. Verse 1 paints a portrait of the present day in the song's timeline. The king is in the closet, he's hiding from today. King is in the closet, he's hiding from today. It tells of the darkness and isolation the king is experiencing, and it details out the beautiful things in life that the king is missing out on as a result of his isolation. It might as well be raining, cause the sunlight hurts his eyes, and his ears will never hear the children's cries. And it might as well be raining, cause the sunlight hurts his eyes. Then we get to verse 2, which starts as a reflection on the king's glory days. Once proud and full of passion, he fought the cause of man. Many people loved his courage, many followed under his command. Many people loved his courage, many followed his command. However, about halfway through the second verse, we start down the road of his breakdown with the line, "And then one day they noticed he was gone." Then one day they noticed he was gone. Just like that. No build-up, no warning signs, just abruptly he wasn't there anymore. The next line is one that I find extremely fascinating. At first it didn't matter, nobody seemed to care. They all became too busy to find him anywhere.
They all became too busy to find him anywhere.
This is a note about human nature. More specifically, people's tendency to just ignore or turn away from problems with the hope that they'll just work themselves out. Oh, the king is fine. He's just been nursing a really bad week-long hangover. He'll be back on the throne in no time. After verse 2, we get what you might call a bridge section. The form is a bit weird and we'll detail it out shortly, but just for shorthand, we're gonna call it a bridge. This is my favorite part of the entire song. In this section, we actually disappear into the mind of the broken king. The narrative point of view shifts to first person, and we're given a vision of the king voluntarily retreating into his own world as a way to escape the stressors of ruling a nation. I close my eyes and go far away from the battlefield. In my dreams, well, here I will enjoy it.
Close my eyes, I go far away from the battlefield.
And also the line, allow me to forget this life I've made my own.
Allow me to forget the life I've made my own.
It's hard to say whether this is speculation about Howard Hughes' mental breakdown, and whether he willfully and intentionally allowed himself to snap. That is an extremely bold and controversial claim with no evidence that I would never try to lay at the feet of Livgren and Walsh. However, it's really interesting lyricism in the form of speculation. Just what exactly would be going through the mind of a king in this situation? The lyrics of this section are tinged with a longing for purity and peace, and a past that maybe never existed. You see this in lines such as, where innocence plays with all the laughing children.
Where innocence plays with all the laughing children.
And life is sweet, but I took it all for granted.
Life is sweet, but I took it all for granted.
The last section is the king lamenting that with the burden of his responsibility, a breakdown was inevitable. Why this refugee of the family of man must die.
Why this refugee of the family of man must die.
This is also just a beautiful line. I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess that this particular line was crafted by Kerry Livgren, who is known for his big picture, spiritually infused analyses of the human condition. Then there's an instrumental section which we'll cover here in a bit. And after that we go into one final verse. Another analysis of the king's isolation and confusion, followed by a tragic news bulletin, spoken as if from one commoner to another in hushed tones in the streets of the kingdom. I heard the king was dying, I heard the king was dead.
Heard the king was dying. I heard the king was dead.
And that's pretty much it. The very last line of the song is the narrator breaking the fourth wall, just to tell you that the story's over. I'll draw the drapes, now destiny is done.
Draw the drapes, now destiny is done.
A lot of alliteration aligning in this line. What I love about these lyrics, aside from how vividly they tell such a metaphorical story, is how each section of the song has its own unique identity and purpose. Verse 1 sets the current scene. Verse 2 tells you how we got here. The bridge gives you an inside look into a cross-section of the tortured king's brain. And verse 3 tells you how the story ends. As I mentioned earlier, I think the bridge of this song is where the true genius lies. Having such a close-up look into the psychology of the king really gives context to how much the mental state of a ruler can impact his kingdom. There are lessons buried in these lyrics about the importance of every person operating well within their own kingdom, and how we're all responsible for figuring out how to deal with the stressors of our own lives. Because the way we act and our mental states matter, and their impacts extend way beyond our own brain chemistry. It's a tragic warning of what can happen when our own kingdoms crumble. So, I wanted to primarily focus on the lyrics and the storytelling in this video, but there is a lot happening in this song musically as well, so very quickly I'm just gonna break down some of my favorite moments. If you want a more in-depth breakdown, I've actually included a PDF of a lead sheet in the description and in the pinned comment of this video. It's a bit technical and music theory dense, but feel free to check that out if you're interested. So, for all intents and purposes, this song is loosely in the key of C. That's as specific as I can really get. The form of this song, as I've already touched on, is a little unconventional, which ironically is conventional for a progressive rock band. It goes intro, verse 1, verse 2, bridge, instrumental interlude, which is almost 2.5 minutes long, verse 3, and then an outro. The verses more or less follow the same harmonic structure, which I've outlined here. Couple things here that really stand out to me. The flat 7/4 falling down into the 4 chord. That sounds like this.
King is in the closet. He's hiding from today.
I love this chord move. It's so emblematic of Kansas's music. They use this all the time and it's always beautiful. For a while in the second half of the verses, we just sit on the major 3 chord, which makes the song kind of feel like it's moving into the key of E.
Gazing out the window of the 42nd floor.
Before we have a 4-1-5 chord move that takes us back to the key of C.
No one knocks upon his door.
We then come to my favorite part of the verses, which is this really beautiful piano-centric section that for some reason is now kind of in the key of F.
And it might as well be raining, 'cause the sunlight hurts his eyes.
The bridge is broken into 2 sections. We have a dreamy, more contemplative section, which features a bunch of weird chords that feel like they loosely fit into the keys of F, A flat, and D flat. Again, we won't dive too much into it, but it looks like this.
I close my eyes, I go far away, away from the battlefield.
And then we have a more full, firm, sincere section that feels like it's squarely in the key of A flat.
Allow me to forget the life I've made my own.
And then we have an instrumental, and there's so much going on in this section. I could do an entire video on this section alone. It starts by switching to 7/8 time and oscillating between these 2 main ideas. Here's idea 1. Here's idea 2. And then it goes to a more standard 4/4 motif, which, just like the bridge, now sounds more sure of itself. And that sounds like this. That is a really sparse reduction of everything that's actually happening, but it'll do for now. And then in the outro, and this is really cool, we have a loose combination of the intro and the instrumental 7/8 time section. It's built around the same organ part from the intro, but every few measures the horn part takes us into 7/8 time briefly. Once again, if you're interested in the nitty-gritty specifics of the harmony and the structure of the song, you can check out the free PDF of a lead sheet that I've created that I've linked in the description and the pinned comment. And that's all we got. This one was a doozy, so thank you so much for making it this far. If you think I missed anything important, please let me know in the comments down below, and feel free to recommend another song or band that you think I should break down. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.